Hi guys, so today's video is going to be a non-spoiler book review and a little bit of a spoiler chat for Starsight by Brandon Sanderson. The non-spoiler portion of this is going to be non-spoiler for both this one and the first one, so even if you haven't read Skyward, no worries, I am not going to be spoiling anything from that book. When I do this portion of the review though, I am going to be kind of comparing and contrasting it to the first one. Nothing that is really detailed about the plot or character development or anything like that, but there are some elements of the first one that I was expecting to see in this sequel. And this sequel for me was quite different in a lot of ways than what I was expecting it to be. The setup for the story is we follow our spunky, feisty main character named Spensa. She is a young girl who has a dream of becoming a fighter pilot for her planet. It is a very futuristic society where humans are basically refugees on this one planet. For the most part, they live underground because they are constantly attacked by aliens. And so this society puts a lot of respect on its military, specifically on its fighter pilots, and her father famously abandoned during a battle and died. And so now Spensa, while she has these dreams of becoming this heroic pilot, a lot of society has basically already decided that's not going to happen. Because she faces so much adversity, Spensa, when we first meet her, understandably, she's got some anger issues, and she's definitely a character that is maybe a hint dramatic and annoying in some ways. And throughout the story in that first one of my favorite parts about the book is her development. The first one's strengths I found were in its pacing, which I found incredible when I first started the book. I thought this leans a little on the younger side of young adult, so it'll be easy to get through, but I wasn't expecting to constantly be on the edge of my seat, which I was for a lot of that book. This is partially because the action scenes were fantastic. I, however, never really particularly like action scenes if they don't feel like they are high stakes, and often the stakes are, for me, rooted in whether or not I care about the characters, and I definitely cared about Spensa, and I cared about the other people that she is trying to train alongside. So not only is the character growth, the pacing, and the action scenes, not only are all those things great, but the rest of the side characters, the relationships between them, I thought all of that it was just so well done. The reason I went into so much detail about this first book, though, is because in the second one, a lot of the things that I loved about the first were not really there. One thing I found in reading Sanderson's books is that he often does such a good job with his world building, but in Skyward, in the first book, that book didn't really require a ton of world building. You know that a lot of the humans are living underground, but they don't really know exactly what's going on, so you don't know all that much that's going on. So the history, the lore, all of those things, that wasn't there very much, and so much of the society is rooted in the pilots. So that's kind of like your culture. The culture is kind of centered around these pilots that are keeping people alive. That was the main gist of the world building. In this one, you get so much more world building, but that I would say is the strength of the second one, where all the things I loved about the first one, those I feel like it was mostly world building this one. It was culture, it was discovery, it was a lot of getting more answers to questions that we had, but the growth of the character, the development of relationships, all that kind of wasn't as prevalent. This, of course, doesn't mean that this was a bad book. It's just that the things that I had come to love about the first one, I thought I was going to get more of that. I thought those things were going to be expanded on in this one. And we kind of went in a slightly different direction, and we focused on different things, which was good, I think, overall for the series. But it means that if I end up loving the third and fourth books, this one is just probably going to be that one that it filled in the gaps, but it's not going to be my favorite in the series. There was one particular series of events that happen in this that are very similar to a series of events from the first book, but because I cared so much about the characters and the stakes in the first book, in this one, when we got this particular plot line, it ended up not really working for me the way I was hoping, emotionally, I should say. I didn't have emotional connection to it. I still was interested in what was happening, and I liked the juxtaposition in some ways. I liked the way our character was suddenly in a different position and had to navigate this new position. But it was a similar series of events, but I didn't feel those events were as good as they were in the first one. Along those same lines, there's also one particular situation that our main character found herself in that was so similar to something that was in the Mistborn trilogy. But it was kind of uncanny, the similarities, where I couldn't help but think, I've read this before. I found that there were some big reveals at the end of Skyward, and at the beginning of Starsight, I was expecting to have these reveals sort of, I was expecting the typical, oh, let's remind you and recap what happened before, so that way you don't have to go back and reread all book one to remember any of this. I was expecting that, but I was sort of expecting it to be elaborated on a little bit and to have our characters sort of have to reflect on these new things as if they were still new to the characters, because they were pretty big reveals. And at the beginning of Starsight, it was kind of like, oh, that stuff that happened, oh, that's old news now. That's not to say those big reveals don't play a role in the events of the second book. It just felt like the characters had time to accept these things, but I, as the reader, was expecting these things. I didn't have time to take these things in and really sit on them and weigh the pros and cons. What does this mean? I wasn't given that time the way the characters were, and it was just a little bit jarring. I feel a little bit bad because this was a good book. This was a fun book. It was just not at all what I was expecting after the first one. For me, I enjoyed the first one so much more, but the strengths in this book really do lie in Sanderson's ability to create very interesting worlds and cultures, which he does so in this book. There was one line in particular, when I talk about the world building with Sanderson, he has, I find, a fantastic way of really delivering the world building in a manner that is connected to the main characters. And so it feels very organic. And there was one line, because our character is wanting to be a pilot and so much of her life revolves around being in her ship, there was one part where she's seeing this place, it's brand new to her, and there are these really tall buildings, and she thinks that the buildings to her look like if you had turned a runway up. And just that simple description, I understand what she's thinking and I understand the description, but the way it's tied into what is kind of her at her core and things that are significant to her and her culture, it's a simple thing like that, and he does it all the time, and I think it's great. Switching gears a little bit here, I found one thing about the story that I really, really, really was not a fan of would be the romance, and I put that in quotes because the romance is not really a thing in the story. If you are looking for a story that is action-packed, hard-hitting, fast-paced, all that stuff, and it's not really about, do they like me? Are we gonna kiss now? But there is a hint, it is very minor. There is a hint of romance, and I liked this hint of romance, and then I did not like that hint of romance at all in this second book. I will get into it in the spoilers, but I either wanted it to not exist at all, or I wanted it to be a bigger deal. One or the other, because the way that we got it, it felt like a weird, I feel bad saying weird, it just felt like an in-between that I personally didn't care for. I will get into some final thoughts here at the end. I'll go ahead and put up on the screen when you can fast forward to if you want my final thoughts, but I am going to get into spoilers now. So if you don't want spoilers, stop watching now. I'm just gonna jump right from that into my spoiler thoughts about the romance. So Jorgen, dang it. I was so bummed because in the first book, we get what could have been a fantastic hate to love trope. And I like that trope if done well, and I think it had the potential to be done very well. In the first book, though, we're kind of focused on the hate portion of this. They're kind of bullies to one another. They're pretty mean, and they definitely become closer through some intense situations, some really sad moments in that first book that brings them together. It makes them realize how petty and dumb that they're being. But we barely got past the I hate this person. We kind of got to the I guess they're not too bad. That's where we ended with the two of them. And so I was expecting over the course of these 4 books that maybe that would progress a little bit more, and certain things in the second book would bring them together. And in the third book, more things would bring them together, and maybe there's tense moments because story, there's a lot of stakes and stuff. I was expecting that, and in the end they'd realize, actually, I love this person, and then it would be the best hate to love. That's what I was expecting, and I didn't expect it to be a big part of the plot. I don't even want it to be a big part of the plot. I just was expecting that. And then it went from, I guess this guy's all right, to, actually, Mbot, I lied. I am into him. I'm gonna smooch him and then dip. And I just was frustrated because I'm like, what? No, I was really disappointed because I found that in that first book, the friendships and the character relationships were so good. And romance, to me, in a story, is a part of character relationship building. And it was so good in that first one. And in this one, it just felt like it took a back seat. But also, it's like, oh, in case you were wondering, like, yeah, she likes him. And then here's them kissing, and then she leaves, and she basically doesn't think about him at all. I understand that her mission, she's got to take care of stuff. But if I just kiss somebody and I'm like, wow, I do like this person a lot, then when I'm on this other planet and I'm thinking about, I gotta save my people, I'd probably think about this person that I might maybe be a little bit in love with. I don't know. Is that just me? I definitely think that the world building in this, Sanderson, he must have had so much fun thinking about the aliens, because the aliens and their cultures and their means of reproduction and all of those sorts of things were so creative and interesting and unique, and I really liked getting to see all of that. I think that the thing I enjoyed about this book the most was the, oh, that's interesting, or oh, that's clever, or oh, that's kind of funny. I liked all those moments. I liked the discovery elements of this book, but I'm such a character-driven reader, and the character elements about the first book for me, they just surpassed this second one. I do want, this is such a little thing, but it's a spoiler spot, so I'm gonna let you guys know to see if any of you thought this too. So this is so dumb. This is not like me being like, wasn't this bad writing? It was bad. The part with Moromir, when they go into the maze place where you see these hallucinations, and so you're supposed to go on with two people because everybody sees something different. If you're both seeing the same thing, that means it's real. And this idea of, I can navigate this all by myself because I am two people combined. That part, that's all I needed. That was just, no, Spencer, I can get through here. Or Alanique. She's like, I can navigate through here. And she's like, oh, and she's like, yes, because I am two people. And it usually takes two people. Spencer, Alanique, I can do this. I'm two people. And I'm like, I get it. I understand how you can navigate this place. Moromir, I got it. I understand you're two people. It's 430 pages in. I understand. So I'm going to read it to you guys. So it starts by saying, I can see through them. And then Spencer thinks, what? And then it says, it shows different things to everyone, Moromir said. And then Spencer thinks, two people, I whispered, holding my head. You need, that's the thing, Alanique, Moromir said. I am two people. And then Spencer starts to think about it. And then Moromir goes on, and it says, it's projecting two different things at me, one to each of the brains of my parents. And then they go on in the next paragraph. The illusions are nothing to me, Alanique. We didn't realize during training. We treated me like anyone else, but I can see through them as two overlapping shadowy images. I can do this. I can reach the heart. And I just thought, yeah, I got that. I get it. I think she does need to be a new personality because this one repeats itself a lot. I'm gonna have that be it for very specific random spoilers. I overall found this story, like I said multiple times, it just was not what I was expecting, but the world building parts and the development of what I can see is going to probably expand the story so much in the next two meant that this book was necessary to be like this. I did enjoy those elements of it. It was just so different from the first one. I definitely loved the ending though. The very, very, very last few pages of this were incredibly high stakes, and I was really concerned for our main character. I didn't know what was going to happen, and I'm very excited to see the start of the next book. I'm definitely really curious your thoughts on this one. Were you happy that it was so different from the first one? Did you like seeing sometimes these similar plot lines but just a little different? Did you like the effect it had? What were your thoughts overall? I'm very curious. But anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you later.